Module 8.3, finding the percent of a number. So method 1, we're going to use a percent model. We're going to find 20% of 50. Since it's out of 50, that means the whole model is out of 50. So step 1, the whole model is out of 50. So what we're going to have a rectangle, break it up into 10 pieces. So let's take a look at this rectangle. If it's broken up into 10 pieces, and the whole thing, if I were to shade the whole thing, that would be 100% of the whole rectangle. Since it's divided up into 10 boxes, 100 divided by 10 is 10. That means each box represents 10%. So if you look, it starts off at 0%, then 10%, another 10, which is 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. So the whole thing is 100%. Now we said that it's out of 50. So if the whole thing, look at step 2, we're going to take 50 and divide it up by the 10 boxes. That means each box represents 5. So remember, the whole thing's out of 50, divided by 10, 5. Each one represents 5. What that means is 10% of 50 is 5. Another 10% of 50 is another 5. Now I'm looking for 20% of 50. So that means I have to shade 2 boxes to represent 20%. So shade 1 box, that's 10%, which is 5. Shade another 10% to get 20%, another 5. 5 plus 5 equals 10. So 20% of 50 equals 10. Now to clean this up a little bit, I have it shaded like this. It is still, the whole thing's out of 50, but each box represents 5. I'm shading 2 boxes because I'm looking for 20% of the whole 50, which equals 10. So 20% of 50 equals 10. This is how to solve 20% of 50 using a percent model. And you can always look up here to follow the steps again. Now here's another way to solve 20% of 50. We can actually just solve this. Of in math means multiplication. So if we're finding 20% of 50, I could, on the left side, I change 20% to a fraction, 20 over 100 times 50 over 1. Now 20 over 100, I could divide that both by 10, so it becomes 2/10. Then I noticed the 50 numerator, 10 denominator could both be divided by 10, so I crossed it out in blue and became 5 over and then 1. So then you multiply across, 2 over 1 times 5 over 1 equals 10 over 1, which equals 10. So that's another way of getting 20% of 50 equals 10. Now on the right, I changed 20% into a decimal. 20 hundredths could be written as 0.20 or just 0.2. You don't need that 0 at the end. Of in math means multiplication, and then 50. 2 times 50 is 100, but put the decimal back in, move the decimal over once, we get 10. So that's the second method of being able to change 20% of 50. The first one is using a percent model, drawing it out. Second one is turning of into multiplication and solving it. Now method 3, setting up a proportion. 20% of 50, remember, out of 50 means that's the whole, it's out of 50. So we're comparing parts to whole. 20%, 20 over 100. Since we're setting up a proportion, we put the equal sign. And since it's out of 50, we know that 50 goes on the bottom. So how does 100 turn to 50? Divide 100 divided by 2 to get 50. So you do the same thing to the top term. 20 divided by 2 equals 10. That means 10 over 50 equals 20%. If you think about 10 over 50, that simplifies to 1/5, which we know is 20%. Method 1. So let's take a look at this. 60% of 70. Since it's out of 70, that's the whole. So if you want, you could set up your percent model, draw a rectangle, break it up into 10, see if you could label the percents on top and also the boxes on the amount on the bottom if it's out of 70. The whole thing's out of 70. So let's take a look. The whole model is out of 70. Divide 70 by 10, that means 7 goes in each box. And since each box represents 10%, we have to shade 60% because we're looking for 60% of 70. That means 6 boxes. So look at this, it would be 7, you can add 7 6 times or just do 6 times 7. So let's clean this up like this. So I'm going to shade 6 boxes to represent 60%. And that means it's 7 times 6, which is 42. That means 60% of 70 equals 42. So using percent model is pretty easy. Method 2, 60% of 70. Of in math means multiplication. So I could change 60% to 60 out of 100 times 70 over 1, simplify early, multiply across, the answer is 42. 60% could also be turned to a decimal, 0.60 or just 0.6 times 70, which equals 42. Method 3, setting up a proportion. Since it's out of 70, the whole thing's out of 70, change 60% into into a ratio of 60 over 100. Remember, we're comparing parts to whole. Since it's out of 70, that has to go on the bottom. Now here we have a problem where we cannot turn 100 into 70. So I have to simplify the ratio. 60 over 100 equals 6/10, which equals 3/5. Now, once I change it to 3/5, I realize 5 times 14 equals 70. You could divide 70 by 5, and you know it's 14. So 5 times 14 is 70. So 3 times 14 equals what? 42. That means 42 out of 70 equals 60%. Now, you can always go back and try any of these problems again. What I could do is I can also throw words to our problem. So let's say 20% of the 50 pencils are red. How many are red? 20% of the 50 pencils are red. If 20% of 50 equals 10, that means 10 of the pencils are red. Let's look at the next question. 60% of the 70 students brought lunch to school. 60% of the 70 students brought lunch to school. How many brought lunch? 42 students brought lunch. So if you want to try these again, go back and try to write this problem out, see if you could solve using all 3 methods.